Good morning and welcome to a brand new episode of Indie Movement here on eCAV Radio. On the show with me today is a local musician, producer, and audio engineer, Leonard Dstroy. I'm a huge fan of this guy, so really excited to have him on the show. Now, to help set the mood for the interview today, we're first going to check out one of the tracks that Mr. Dstroy sent me called Death of Hip Hop by Kool DJ EQ. Now, there is a huge significance to this track as it's taken from the album Return of the DJ Volume 1, which was the very first all DJ, all scratching album ever released. After this song is done, we'll jump right into the interview, which will take us right up to our first commercial break. You're tuned into Indie Movement on eCAV Radio.
With great dancers, graffiti writers, MCs, and slum surviving DJs. But here in 1995, selfishness and greed has forced some to neglect those on the wheels and stills. MCs engaging in this type of behavior see themselves as getting over, but in reality, they're contributing to the death of true hip-hop.
Break it down, no question. I'm getting busier. I can break it down. This DJ
just getting busy.
I can break it down for you. Like this, like this, like this, like this.
All right, so I am in the studio today with Leonard Dstroy, who is a local DJ and beat maker from Kansas City, man. Thank you for coming in and hanging out with me on the show. Man. So, did I do your bio right?
Yeah.
DJ, beat maker, producer, all the above?
Yeah.
How long you been doing music for?
Well, I started DJing in 1994, and then I didn't start producing and making beats until about 2000, but I didn't really get serious until 2001, 2002.
Mm-hmm.
I just kind of dabbled at first, a little bit.
What was the turning point that made you get serious about it?
Well, I went to recording school.
Okay.
And so, I mean, I was already getting serious at that point, but, and I was already kind of like making beats on MPC and stuff like that.
Uh-huh.
But that's the first time I ever messed with a computer, program. And that's like right around the time when software was just kind of becoming available to like the masses on a larger scale. So, and I went out there and they had like a computer lab. And that's where like I first learned how to use Acid Pro and all that stuff.
Okay,
yeah. It was already on there, you know what I mean?
Sure.
Yeah, so I went out there wanting to get into it, but knowing nothing more than like RCA cables at that time. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That's about the extent of my knowledge. And then I went out there and learned all this stuff, and it just kind of like I already had the desire to do it, but I didn't have the know-how. So that was like the major limitation.
Nice.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So after that, got going, and then just kind of slowly ramped it up and progressed. And then I didn't really start taking it seriously until like 2005 or 6 as like, hey, maybe I could do more,
Right.
make it a hobby. And-
Was it hard for you, or was it easy for you to go from primarily making music on hardware than to software?
No, I mean it was much easier because you had
Yeah.
the visual. When you're chopping samples or something in an MPC, you can do it, but you're on the little screen,
Right.
versus you got a monitor, and then just the ease of, and then just how powerful a computer is, and the things you could do with it. You could work so much faster.
So do you think that just being forced to use and chop up samples on the MPC, once you went to use like a DAW, I guess for lack of a better
Yeah.
term, a digital audio workstation, that it was just that much easier and you were that much ahead of people who may have been just doing that for the first time?
Yeah, it definitely there's a certain learning curve to all this stuff, and there's a certain language, and a lot of times coming into it as a novice, there's a lot of that you have to get over, that hump of the technology holding you back. You know what I mean? So I was able to have a better understanding of that, but I don't think I really was able to utilize the whole engineering side of things until much later down the road. You have to kind of train your ear. When you're just getting started, you're not with anything else, you might be all right at the beginning, but as you go, and that
Right.
goes with the engineering and mixing and making the whole technical side of things.
Right.
Has this curve, not just the musical end of it, so
Yeah.
you got to get up. And then I'm still I'm at the point now where I love what I can do, but I have to learn a new program. I'm about to switch it up. After we do this next record, I'm gonna basically stop using what I'm using, not altogether, but slowly phase out and move to another system.
Welcome back. If you're just joining us right now, I have a special guest in the studio with me today, Mr. Leonard Dstroy, who is a musician and producer out of Kansas City. Before the break, Mr. Dstroy was talking about his plans to switch up the software that he records and writes on. So let's go ahead and jump back into the interview. You're tuned into Indie Movement on eCAV Radio. That's
You know what I mean?
interesting. Why are you doing that just because you want that challenge?
Yeah, and I think it makes you make music differently.
Okay.
And then also I'm using older stuff, so now what's becoming available is I want to get that, but you have to essentially move on to another platform. You know what I mean? So using Reason and Acid and all this stuff is cool, but I'm gonna switch over to Ableton. I don't know if you know Ableton.
Ableton
Live.
is the best, dude. That's what I write.
And I use it a little bit.
Yeah.
I know enough, but I don't. That's not my main thing. I use it for certain functions, for already. So I have an understanding of it, but I don't know. It's just time to make that switch. And then for that kind of program too, you can invent ways how you want to use it. You know what I mean?
absolutely
So
can with
it's-
Macs and
Yeah.
yeah.
And I think it'll just make me it. Sometimes you have to challenge your brain, and you get too comfortable
Sure.
doing the same thing, and I don't want to do that too much longer. I want to progress.
Stay
But
fresh.
I want to do it in the middle of an album. It's not the time. You know what I mean? So I'm gonna wait till we're done. Because it's gonna be a few months at least of downtime. And I know Dom knows too. He's working on switching over and doing some stuff in Ableton, and it's just a slower process. To get proficient at it. You could make things in it, but when you get comfortable in your element, and then you can move quickly in that.
Yeah, so you don't lose that musical idea
that's
that you try to
important.
transpose.
Your workflow is very important when it comes down to it. That's probably one of the you can't set up any kind of roadblock for yourself. So
Right.
learning a new program, that's a major roadblock.
Do you play any instruments?
Little keys. I mean, nothing I wouldn't play in front of people where I feel comfortable. But in the studio, I'm cool. But mainly drums. I played
Okay.
drums for a long time. I'm nothing too serious, but I'm I use it a lot in the music that I make. But drums and percussion and stuff really.
One of my buddies one time was saying that for him to be a better DJ, he took time off to actually learn the drums,
Yeah.
and that when he came back, it helped him.
It's very similar because I've done a scratch DJ, turntables kind of thing for
Sure.
years, and it's basically a percussion instrument. It's just you have to play it in a certain way, but it translates almost perfectly. So that's I've kind of one thing has helped the other. You know what I mean? So I've always done it, but I haven't been serious about it until more recently, where I'm I want to start being able to perform out, and I do it a lot in the studio, but knowing people that are amazing is a great motivator, but it's also at the same time it makes you I don't even want to look at these things, when somebody comes over that's a Ryan Lee or something like that, you're you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It definitely helps because I'm mainly a percussionist and a turntablist, so.
So in school, did you have to learn music theory? Was that part of the?
I don't know anything, man. Like,
Really?
I seriously don't know anything. Like, Dom could tell you that too. He's for people that are at home, like, he's sitting next to me in the chair here. But yeah, I mean, but I think like that's kind of like a strength sometimes too. You know what I mean? Like, because like I don't know. Sometimes I think that might get in the way for some people. For me, like, it's definitely hinders me sometimes. But sometimes not knowing that, I know what I know in my head. You know what I mean? But I can't like explain to you like the chord progression that I'm but I can hear it in my head. You know what I mean? So. It's a blessing and a curse sometimes, you know what I mean?
So how did you put together an album like ADHD or ADHD2 with no musical theory background?
Just like I said, man. I mean, I think like I have it within me. If I sat down and learned it, I could probably pick it up pretty quickly. But I've always come at it on a real raw approach. You know what I mean? Like starting in the beginning as more like a producer, beat maker. But as getting, never learning the theory side of it, but getting better musically, you know, like. It's an interesting place to be because I'll be around musicians trying to explain concepts to them that I want to get out. But it's like you can't like relay that. You know what I mean? So it's difficult sometimes for sure. But like I said, it definitely that raw approach kind of helps too. You know what I mean? Yeah. So I don't know. I just like to think I have a good ear for things. Hopefully. Do
you have any plans on sitting down, learning any theory?
A little bit. I mean, yeah, I would like to learn more. I mean, honestly, like when I sit down at a piano and play parts out for a record or something like that, it sucks not knowing like, oh, if I just knew how to like make this to that, you know what I mean, or whatever. Yeah. Like that's what I'm gonna get over that hump. You know what I mean? I could figure it out and sit there, but it takes a lot of time. Versus like being able to go to school for just pick that up in like 2 seconds. Like, that's just another reason having a production partner that has like all that. It's gone to school, has a degree. You know what I mean? Like, that's cool with me because like that definitely helps.
I would be curious, just wondering like, what is the actual? You take a look at all successful artists. Like, how many of them actually know theory? Yeah, it would be. Well, I
mean, you'd be shocked. I mean, look at Pharrell. Just getting caught out there not too long ago on the whole. You know what I mean?
He just has that ear for it.
Yeah, I mean, you could. I just don't think all the rules don't always have to apply.
Right.
You could be good, but it helps. But if you have the ear for something, then you could make it happen. It might be more difficult, and it's also like you gotta utilize what you're good at. So for me, I know I'm not a player, so I just bring in people around me that are good, and I could have them do stuff and then manipulate what they do too. You know what I mean? So I just know now that that's not my strength, but my strength might be in something else. So I'll use that to my advantage.
Yeah, it's so important to surround yourself with a team like that. Yeah.
Yeah. It helps, like over the years. And then, meeting more and more people. And like lately, like it just seems like Kansas City is just full of people. They're just incredible. And they're also like kind of like very like-minded and wanting to do different stuff and like being open to like doing hip hop, but coming from jazz backgrounds and this and that. And I don't know, it's an interesting time.
Tell me a little bit about how you started collaborating with folks. Did you just write beats, put it out there, people hit you up? Did you proactively go and seek them out?
This is like back when I first started, when I got, my first name was Deep Thinkers. I don't know if you remember the group Deep Thinkers, me and Brother Moses. For years and years, that was the thing. We had records out like early 2000s, and they, we were out in stores like overseas and stuff and doing our thing. So that was my main project, and I kind of refused to work with other people for a long time, just for maybe 10 years. Not refused to, but it was just like, I was like, this is my thing.
Gotcha.
This is my lane. And not that we have people on the record with us and stuff, but Brother Moses, the, guy in Deep Thinkers, he started doing more artwork and stuff like that. He's like a visual artist, graphic artist, does murals and stuff. He's really dope. But that's, he started drifting more towards that. So that just allowed for me to start, having more time to like do my thing. So I started doing more solo stuff, but then, it's always fun. So I don't know, just people I've known around here forever, Leonard Stick or, Cuddy Slids or Mac Lethal or whoever. I just known these guys, since we all kind of came up together, and so those hit me up and like, yo, let's do something. I'm just the type of guy, like, I like to do like track here or there, but I also really like to sit down and do like a record, like a project with somebody. So that's kind of how it came about. Like Stick hit me up last year. It was like, let's do something. So I was like, hey, good time, I'm not really doing anything right now, and let's do it.
And was that Elmhurst?
That was that, and there was the Stick figure as himself project.
Yeah,
that was, those two things happened like pretty much at the same time. But yeah, that was just something happened, real quick and out of nowhere.
And then one thing just kind of led to another. Yeah, because you have some pretty extraordinary collaborations.
Yeah.
And then you and Dominique here, you guys are the Xtraordinaires. You guys dropped a record last year.
Yeah.
And how'd you find LaRouche Records to release it for you?
They found us.
Because they're from like Europe, aren't they? France?
France.
Yeah.
Yeah, they hit us up. Well, we had put out a few singles, like some remixes and stuff, and just right off the bat, like we're getting some like attention off of it, and like the first song we put out, like the next day it was on OK Player on the front page and stuff. So I was like, So based off that, like we got a few people hitting us up on our SoundCloud page, a couple just small labels, and we were already talking about doing something. We're gonna do it anyway. So we just decided, rather than put out our like a Bandcamp page, it just let's do something official with a label, in a small label, a startup, like us. You know what I mean? Let's start up together. You know what I mean? So they hit us up, and I went through their catalog, and I was really into it, and the cat that runs it, he does some stuff as Doc Mastermind. He's like a really dope producer out there, and I really think he's dope too. So I was just listening to stuff and was into it, and he was real adamant about doing something with us, and it turned out from going from a track or two to an EP to like an album, just because we were ready to do a record. You know what I mean? We just hooked up, so they just happened to be like the ones that were hit us up at the right time, and we like, here you go.
And so you guys are working on a follow-up right now, and how's that coming along so far?
It's coming pretty well, man. I mean, we've been working pretty hard on it for about the last month or so. Yeah, just about. And we've got a lot of it, a good chunk of it already going. So our goal is maybe like a month or so from now have it done.
I'm recording that. I mean, I'm assuming that you record and you mix and you master.
Yeah, I mean, maybe we might look into getting it mastered because we have a little, we have some leeway on what we're going to do with this one. But yeah, it's mainly because it's efficient and I've recorded, records at like Chapman and stuff before, and it's a lot of money for, something.
Yes.
You know what I mean? So it's definitely a cost thing too. But we might get it mastered just because I want this to be really good. And there's a lot somebody could do, like a mastering engineer, I can't do, especially in my place. So there's something to think about for sure.
So when you're mixing your own project, has there ever been a point where you sit down and you mix, you're like, man, we need to go back and retrack this?
Yeah, I hear it a lot, and like 99% of the time I'll catch it, but like there's stuff I still hear that I put out that's in the world that I hear now. I'm like, man, I wish I could go back and hit that up again. But I'm pretty picky. I'm not saying the best or anything, but I just listen to it a ton of times. I mean, like before you even hear it, I probably heard it 4,000 times. Like no joke, like for weeks. I mean, if you listen to your song like you hear on the radio all day, every day. That's basically what I'm doing. So yeah, it's just whittling it down, and you kind of come back to it with a fresh set of ears and catch something. Oh, that's too loud. That's too quiet. And I don't know. I'm not the best, but I'm perfectionist. So I don't put it out there if I don't think it's cool. But like I said, I'll miss some stuff. I regret it. There's some stuff I've heard like, damn, those vocals need to go up a little, or so. But it is what it is. You know what I mean? Who cares?
Yeah, and it's crazy because like 95, 96% of the time, you're the only one who's going to notice that. Yeah. Because you're so close to it.
Yeah. And then you listen to something like years down the road, and it's like the detail that you're listening for is gone. Right. So like for me, it's like I have to get into this really obsessive mind state to do this stuff where I'm just like, and my wife thinks I'm like halfway crazed, like when I'm doing this, because she'll come out and I'm like, man, it is kind of like it takes all your energy to like focus in on the smallest little details of something like that. I don't know. It's just a weird process, really.
I know exactly what you're talking about because when I listen to music, I listen to the instruments. I don't listen to like when I first hear something, I don't listen to the vocals or the melody.
Yeah.
I listen to like the mix. And it's funny because my wife too, she'll be like, oh, did you hear what he just said? And I'm like, man, that snare, it's way too hot. Yeah. They need to turn it down.
Yeah.
Does that ever affect you when you're listening to music since you do mix?
Yeah, I'll hear other people's stuff and like want to mix it for them. I'm like, or I hear other people's stuff and I'm like, man, I want my stuff to sound like that. But like, yeah, I'm nitpicking everything.
Yeah.
Or I hear something, I'm like, that sounds like a wrong chord.
Right.
You know what I mean? It's always something like, it's kind of a bad thing sometimes.
It is kind of frustrating, right? Because like, I really want to love this song.
I just want to enjoy it and chill, you know what I mean? Yeah. Like, yeah, it's exactly what it is.
Yeah, absolutely. So being a producer, I feel, this is my personal opinion, that a lot of people don't get what a producer does. They don't understand. I think a lot of people these days, they think if they write a beat on their computer, they're a producer. Yeah. And in my opinion, a producer is project management. So you're managing the project, the budget, bringing in players, understanding how the flow and the concept is. Yeah. How would you define a producer?
Yeah, it's both, because a lot of kids coming up now don't even know like the term of a producer, and that's like, I look at like a producer like a Quincy Jones kind of cat,
right,
where you can play the instruments, you can make the music, but then there's the whole side of things. You're like the director, you know what I mean?
Exactly.
And sometimes like you don't even have to do anything. You come in and maybe take something off a beat, you know what I mean? Or that's producing too, you know what I mean? It's just that's lost on a lot of people, but that's what I try and bring to it, Like I've worked with bands like reggae bands and stuff like that, and not really added any parts to it, but produced the record as like, here's what I would do, this and that, and yeah, I definitely try and come at it from that angle for sure. Still.
Sure. And I think a lot of your stuff, I think this is awesome because I can tell almost immediately when it's like a Lenny D thing, like Lenny D produced, because you have a sound. Yeah. Do you think that you have a sound?
A little bit, yeah. I think so. I try and stick out. One thing that I'm very conscious of all the time is like I love when I hear people's stuff, but I hate when I hear somebody when it's like, well, I've heard this done better, and then it's just over and over and over. It's like obviously everybody's going to be influenced by something, you know what I mean? We're all influenced. There's nothing new under the sun, but there's ways to like go about it where you can add some of your own flair to it. And so I'm very like turned off by people's stuff that is like an obvious like
just
copy
generic
or something.
sample.
Yeah, you know what I mean? Or it's like you didn't dig too deep. You're playing cool stuff, but what you're playing, like the sound design behind it or whatever, is not like fully fleshed out. You know what I mean? Like,
absolutely.
So it all matters,
That's interesting. You just mentioned sound design. So tell me if you run into this. Like when I'm writing a song and let's say I put a snare in, I get down the rabbit hole of, man, I want the snare to sound exactly this way. So I'll spend like 3 hours just tweaking the sound and just not getting anywhere writing wise. Yeah. Do you ever run into that?
Yeah. Well, that used to be the problem for me, but now I've learned over the time that you have to divide these processes into different parts. So like what I do is like there's days I go play drums, make sounds, mess around playing keys, do any of that stuff, and there's days I sit down to write music and that's it, you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. But trying to make the like all that stuff and like focus in and tweak your snare and all that, you get lost on that path, you can't, so you got to divide it into your workflow, into different days. So that's what I do. So I know I'm going to wake up today and make a couple of different synth patches. I'm going to like make a really dope drum library or just do a real dope drum pattern. I'm going to spend like 4 or 5 hours on it. You know what I mean? And that's it. And not try and write music that day because I know it's going to be a push and pull. You know what I mean?
Right,
the whole time. So
yeah.
But it took a long time to come to that realization that it just doesn't work when you try and do it all at once. You know what I mean?
It just takes you out of the zone. It completely takes you out of the zone.
Yeah, and that's the thing. Like the best stuff always comes quickly. So if you set yourself up to be in a position where you're writing quickly and you're not hitting these roadblocks, that's how you make good.
Yeah.
I don't know if I.
I'll just edit that out. That's how you make good stuff. That's what he said.
My bad. I forgot.
You're good.
All right.
Okay, so what we're going to do right now is take a quick break, but do not worry. Don't worry. It's going to be real quick. And when we get back, we're going to check out some music from my special guest today, Mr. Leonard Dstroy. We'll then continue our conversation and talk a little bit about the art of DJing, why Mr. Dstroy would never DJ a wedding, and then we are going to do a deep dive into his extremely unique projects titled ADHD and ADHD2. You're tuned into Indie MOODment here on eCAV Radio. Welcome back to Indie MOODment. What we're going to do now, we're going to check out some music. This song is from the Xtraordinairs, and it's called Soul Samba, taken from their X Life album that was released late last year. My special guest in the studio with me today, Mr. Leonard Dstroy, makes up half of this group, and his buddy Dominique Sanders, who is a phenomenal bass player and musician, who was actually in the room with us during the conversation that we had. He makes up the other half of this group. After Soul Samba is done, we're going to go ahead and jump right back into the interview. You're tuned in to Indie MOODment here on eCAV Radio. What's the most important trait in your opinion to be a DJ?
To be a DJ?
Yeah.
Oh man, well there's different kind of DJs. It depends what kind of DJ you want to be.
Tell me about the different types of DJs.
Well, I mean, like you've got the DJ that plays music solely to make people, enjoy that, and then
Right,
you have
like at a
the more
club.
Yeah, you have the more show kind of cat when you're doing scratching, tricks, turntables kind of stuff, and then there's levels to all that. You know what I mean? Like,
Okay.
So I mean, I don't know. Like I wouldn't consider myself like the best at. I couldn't. I mean, and there's like even like wedding DJs or something like that. There's that whole side of things where I'm not saying that's like part of the hip hop game, but like that's a talent too that I couldn't do that. I've been DJing forever. I wouldn't want to. I'd be terrified of that scenario.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Because
Why
there's
is
a lot
that?
of pressure there. You know,
Yeah,
on that
it's
day,
true.
it's
It's an important day.
Yeah, exactly. What are you gonna? And so I mean, there's what I'm saying, there's levels to it all.
Sure.
For me, like I don't know what I do now in my setup when I DJ or whatever. It's not even using 2 turntables anymore. I use one now and a
Okay.
mixer, and I use a sampler,
Mm-hmm.
and I run a lot of my own like productions off the sampler and do stuff to it now. So I try and do my stuff more like a performance these days. You
Yep.
know, I kind of step back from doing. For years and years I did like just 2 turntables and spinning other people's stuff, but.
Mm-hmm.
For me now, it's like it's just something to be gained about doing your own stuff. You know what I mean? There's a lot of like satisfaction when you hear that coming through speakers. and
Absolutely.
or even doing edits of people's stuff or live, remixes or stuff like that. I'm kind of for that school of thought, but I
Yeah.
respect it all. And there's things I couldn't do. Like there's cats like Jock Max or Spin Styles or all these guys in town that are incredible DJs. And, I don't have that kind of, skill level to be on that, you know what I mean? But, there's other things that I'm interested in. Like there's like I came from the Invisible Scratch Pickles
Oh God, those
side
guys
of
are
things. So I love
amazing.
that.
Cubert.
Yeah, but then that
Yeah.
gets too technical sometimes too, because then you get in diving into scratching. It's just like
Right.
it's the nerd's nerd, So it's like you could bring like the funkiness of rocking a party and that technical side and marry the two, and that's what I've been trying to like figure out how to do. I've been really
Nice.
working really hard over the last few years on making the stage show stuff.
Yeah.
More.
So how do you practice? Do you just practice like a live band would practice when for playing out live? You just get down in your studio and
Well,
you
I
just
pretty much
work on
know
your
like
set?
now, like what if I know what kind of gig I'm going to be doing, then I kind of know how to put it together. I have just little pre-assembled segments that I'll work on.
Okay.
They're like 3 to 5 minutes that I could just change them in and out. So, after the last few years, I've been building up the arsenal. So I have enough to where like, okay, this is going to be kind of more laid back thing. So here's my chill, jazzy kind of hip hop stuff. Or this is going to be going like all out. So here's my like turn it up music or whatever. You know what I mean? Like,
Sure,
so I
sure.
haven't, and I'm real picky about like taking like on. I'm very hesitant to take on things that aren't me. You know what I mean?
Uh-huh.
So I don't play that many things out like compared to some DJs here. You know what I mean? I play my stuff, so you could kill that really quickly. People get bored of that, really quickly, unless you like spread it out a little.
Would you say that you prefer writing in the studio or playing out live more?
I like them both, man.
Yeah.
Like I love like the performance side of things too. Like, and that's. Moving forward, we're starting a band and the Xtraordinair is like
Yeah.
live project, or whatever you want to call it. But that's very important to me. I love that aspect of it. And I've been doing it since that I started doing it. I was playing in clubs before I could get in the club and had people, get me in the door when I was on stage that night. You know what I mean? So I always want to do that part of it. But, there's something to be said about being by yourself in the isolation of the studio and thinking it out. And I just like both ends of it. But you can't have one without the other, and too much of one is bad. So during the winter, like last 3 years, it's been where this is where the writing process.
That's the way to do it.
And
You're not
then
out.
spring,
It's freezing.
March, we're coming out with a record, then we get
Yeah.
out and start doing the show. So it's kind of like knowing when to hibernate.
Yeah.
Do your
No, you
thing,
get that timing down. That's
Yeah,
smart.
yeah,
That's
yeah,
definitely
sure.
smart. So when you used to DJ, would you just bring crates of records with you?
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
definitely start with vinyl, man. Like this is crates and all that, and I was doing the DMC battles back when they were still
wow.
around and all that, man.
Yeah. So are you a fan then now of DJing more electronically? I know
Oh, yeah.
I know you said that you still bring a turntable. You said you still have
sure.
that analog element, but
Well, it's a digital turntable. Like
Okay.
I use a Denon, which is like a 40. It's like a 7-inch platter. It's
Okay.
a piece of vinyl, but it controls like you can plug a zip drive in there or
Mm-hmm.
CD, whatever. So it's the future with the past. You know what I mean?
yeah, yeah.
Which is cool. I have no problems with anybody like whatever it is. I just the art of like cutting and scratching is almost like dying. So I
Or
try
just
and
beat
keep that-
juggling.
Yeah.
Holy man, I was like, man, this isn't going to be too hard. And I threw out 2 records, and I'm like, there's no freaking way I'm going to
Yeah,
get these
yeah.
to match up. How do
It's
you guys
hard,
do
man.
it?
It takes years. It's like learning any other instrument.
It
People don't
absolutely-
realize that it just looks
yes.
like. And that's what I thought when I first started doing it. I remember seeing the movie Juice,
Yeah.
and that's one of the things that really got me hooked because this is like pre-internet, like being able to just like have anything at your fingertips.
Yes.
So you had to really like seeing that on TV was like, oh my god, you know what I mean? And that got me hooked. But then you try it, it's like, whoa, it's a little more difficult than it looks. You know?
So are you one of the guys that goes to the record store and you just dig and just spend hours and hours?
I used
looking
to,
for
not
new-
anymore, man. I've got so much stuff right now, it's insane. Like if I told you how much like music I'm sitting on, like sometimes I'll go just for like to get out and like the act of it's cool, and then it's always like I like to do the record store thing because then if I'm spending money on something, then I better use what it's a challenge,
Right.
you know what I mean? So it's
Yeah.
like, and it's also like one of those things where you could sift through something for hours and hours, and you only come out with like 2 or 3 things.
Right.
And it's just like, I don't know, the hunt and the chase, man. I'm still addicted to all that, you know what I mean? But there's also like, you know, other ways and means to get what you need. I don't want to speak too much on that, but
Yeah, sure. So that electronic kind of turntable you were just talking about, is the feel close, or have they gotten it a lot similar? Because I knew when
Oh,
they
yeah.
first released something like that, it was like, wow, this is really just kind of
yeah, well, there's still ones out there that suck. So, to be honest with you, most of them do. There's a couple that they got really right. Like I have this Newmark one and I have this denim one, and the Newmark one is like a 12-inch bladder, and actually it's a piece of vinyl, so you could take it off, unscrew it, and it comes out, but it just controls the thing.
Okay.
And it's pretty close. I mean, Serato is pretty close. It boils down to like how detailed you want to get and the intricacies of like the small little things that you do with your hand movements. And for the average person, they wouldn't know anything, no difference whatsoever.
Oh, nice.
For me though, it's great because, you know, Serato's great, but you're still using a needle and you still have the ability to smack that thing right off the table.
Yeah.
And when you play with a lot of bands and stuff, or like or next to people, like that really matters. Like
Yeah.
the vibration will eat it up. So having something that you're not having those like things could go down on you, then yeah.
It's like house party. Who hit the table?
Yeah. You don't want any of that, man. So it's great for that. And then also you, the one I got now, it's like you could plug a clip into it, you know, and you could have 1,000 sounds.
Yeah.
All pre-made. So that's what I do. I've been making like for a couple of years, 3 or 4 years now. I've been making like my own scratch libraries, like custom-made sounds, like tricking them all out and like so nobody else has got them. You know what I mean? It's like one of a kind stuff. And
Right.
you can only do that with like you can't do the vinyl. So I
Sure.
started rocking those a long time ago.
And that definitely helps you.
I still got them
maintain
at the house. I mean, I got a record player, you know, for sampling
Sure.
records and stuff. But
it. So let's talk about ADHD and ADHD2.
Yeah,
I
sure.
thought that ADHD2 and ADHD, those are amazing because you essentially treat it like a classical movement.
yeah,
Where you have like one track and then you just move from this idea to this idea to this idea, but you maintain, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, kind of like similar drum tones, but you just
Yeah.
change the feel. How did
Yeah.
you sit down one day and you're just like, man, I have ADHD. I know it's not what it stands for, but you're like, I'm just gonna create 5 different things, see if I can mix them together.
Oh,
How did
man,
that?
like right before I started doing that record, I was doing, starting to put together my live stuff, and that's how I ended up playing my music live to people. Ends up being because I'm like just have the smallest attention span. I like this, I love to just this beat I want to drop. I got this beat I want to drop. I don't have too many beats, and so it was partly that, and then it's partly I've heard a couple people have done similar things, but not really take it all the way.
Right.
Like one thing that really inspired me is I don't know if you heard that Exile record, Radio. One of the best like beat like producer records I think in the last since the genre has come about really. And there's a lot of them out there, but this one was really dope. And he had a track on there called Mega Mix or something like that, and it was like 3 minutes or 4 minutes of just little ideas like that, but they were not the same beat, and they were kind of like just little clips. So I was like, well, you know what, that's awesome, but he just did it for like 2 seconds, and I was like, man, I would love to hear a whole record like that.
Sure.
But then I was like, what would be dope is to like use the same drum pattern, so you can see how something's flipped on top of the same drums over and over. And then another idea that not really worked out as well as I wanted to, but in some cases did, was like be able to have each of these movements or whatever kind of not be in the same chord or like, but the keys be relatable to each other. So you're not like feeling like it's like
Completely different track.
yeah, it's like it's like it takes you on a journey where it's not jarring to your ear. It's
Sure.
kind of like you kind of flow from one thing to the X, and it's more like easy on you like that. And so it's just an idea to do that. And then the first one I did, man, about killed me. Like, I swear to God.
Like time-wise or just...
No, just like the energy and effort it took to do it. Like, it was, okay, just, I mean, when you sit down to do this, you're like, okay, I'm going to do it. Going through all these records, just getting the music.
I can
you know,
imagine.
digging for the records, man.
Yeah.
That's like a month right there.
Sure.
At least. And then going through and like, okay, laying out the beat and then going through everyone and like, but you know, I did the first one in like a month and a half or 2 months or something like that, really quickly. But it was just like, and I remember at the end of it, like, I'll never do this again. You know what I'm saying? But then like a couple years later, like listening to it, like I really liked it. And I was like, man, this is like, I never get tired of it. Like with my stuff, I get like lately, you know, lately I've been a lot better about it. But like in the past, it's like, if it's done, I hate it. And that's how I know it's done, because I'll never want to hear it again. But this is, I come back to. I was like, man, this is like something I'm like proud of. Like I said, when knowing who I am, like as a producer, this is my strength. You know, I was like manipulating this kind of thing. So I was in my element. And so I was like, you know, once I got a little distance from it and the headache wore off of making it, and I was like, you know, maybe I want to do part 2. And I just thought about it for a long time. And then eventually got down to it, like, you know, I'm just going to go ahead and do it. You know what I mean? You know? And knowing that like something might come out of it, I might use like turn it in some of these into like full tracks down the road or something like that. So it's like, but it's just a challenge, man. Like, you know, can you do this?
Yeah.
And something I know I you know, it's a record I could listen to over and over and never get bored of, because I always catch something new, even for me, and I made it, you know. So I like it for that, and I wanted to do that.
I think you make a really good point, because, every time I sit down with it, I notice a different layer. You have a lot of layers going on.
Yeah.
How do you write? Do you just keep stacking layers on top, and then you listen back, you're like, well, I'm going to take this one out, or maybe just one needs to come in?
Yeah, it all starts with like a bass.
Okay.
Like there's like you'll get like just the general idea. And then I'll just move on, and then I'll come back on a second time around through the, you know, like I'll make the beat or whatever, sit it aside, come back to it. And then the second round is like sifting through things and finding things that work with each thing. You know what I mean? And maybe going through each thing a few times. It's just a process that just takes a lot of like, I mean, not serious. It takes a lot of time, because I didn't spend like a year doing it. Like the last one I did in a month, but just long days. You know what I mean?
I
like,
bet,
long days. And your ear just gets fatigued like really bad, because you're listening to sound on sound, things that work. I mean, for everything that you hear work on the record, there's a million things that didn't work.
Right.
You know what I mean?
That's very true, yeah.
And so you just hear these train wrecks of like sound clashes all day in your head, man. It's like, after a while, it's like, it's enough, you know what I mean? So it drove me crazy. I actually finished the second one and got super sick, like with like an ear infection.
Oh, man.
And I think it might be just like constant, you know, loud music all day, and like sounds and high pitched things, and oh man.
Welcome back to Indie MOOment here on eCAV Radio. Thank you all so much for tuning in today, and I would like to thank my special guests, Leonard Dstroy and Dominique Sanders, for taking the time out of their busy schedule to come hang out and chat with me in the studio. If you missed some of the interview today, I got your back. No need to worry, as you can stream it on my YouTube page, /AEBeats Music. After we wrap up the interview here shortly, the song that is going to take us out of today's show is from Amon Tobin, and it's taken off his album Bricolage. I did not get to air this part of the interview due to time constraints. However, Leonard Dstroy did explain to me that at that particular point in his life when that album came out, Bricolage was a huge influence on him on learning how to produce records. So I thought you guys should know that. All right, well, I'm going to go ahead and run the rest of the interview. We're going to check out that jam, and then I'll catch back up with you guys on Wednesday. I'm your host, AEBeats, signing off. So where can people find you online? Where can they find your stuff?
You can find me on my SoundCloud, which is, you know, SoundCloud /Leonard Dstroy, or, you know, I have a Bandcamp page, Twitter page, and all that stuff. And then, you know, we're setting up this record label called MelodySoul Records right now, in the process of getting that all launched. And so there'll be a website coming there too, and all this and that.
And what's your role in that record label?
I'm gonna be kind of like, for lack of a better word, like the vice president role of it. You know what I mean? My homie Austin, he lives out in Baton Rouge. He's the founder of it or whatever. And it's like a beat collective. It's more like a loose collective. And when they approached me, and then, you know, we decided to turn it into more of a full-fledged thing. So that will be happening this year. The record we're doing right now, Xtraordinair's record, will be the first released through the new label.
Okay, so you're gonna get involved with A&R probably. And
Yeah.
Publicize.
Yeah, definitely. Like we've already got
marketing.
Ideally, what we want to do is take this, be self-sufficient. You know, from here on out, like Xtraordinair is going to be the thing, but then we'll have our own way of putting our records out. So, you know, and not to say we're not going to ever. I mean, obviously, if we get the opportunity, we'll work with some labels. You know what I mean?
Sure,
but having
sure.
our own imprint and our own like lane is something I think it's important for us. You know?
Yeah, absolutely. Because then you
And-
can maintain what you guys stand for and your
and
image, and you control all
ownership
that.
is great, you know. And I
Yeah.
think like if we could get it to the point where that's the highest level of living life to me. It's like I don't need to be rich, but I'd love to do my own thing, you know,
Right.
and like have that work out. And so that's what we're gonna try and do. And I'm lucky enough to have like some really great people I work with. Like I'm believing like the music that we could put out there. It's just a matter of like getting over that hump, you know, and like finally getting beyond the boundaries of the city, which is the goal, you know, at this
Yeah.
point. Long story short, you can find me on the internet. Somewhere.
On the World Wide Webs.
Yeah.
So do you guys have a targeted idea for release date for the next Xtraordinaire's album?
Probably it'll be coming out like summer.
Okay.
Sometime.
Oh, wow.
It'll be done soon, but we're gonna take the time, and this is gonna be done right. You know, this is gonna be super official, so it won't be something just putting out once 2 days after we finish it off. You know what I mean?
Yeah. You're going to put the time in, like the 6 days release to market and press.
This is gonna be a proper rollout here. It's the first, release for the label, so
Yeah.
we're gonna do it right.
It's interesting because a lot of artists, and I understand when they get it done, they're like, I want to release it tomorrow. It's like, guys, if you guys do that, you're not going to get the right press for it.
Yeah.
And so you just got to kind of play that game. Okay, yeah, we're going to do it soon. We're going to do it
Yeah.
soon. But it's going to be 6 days.
It's like I wanted to come out tomorrow.
Yeah.
I want you to hear it, but man, like I don't know. I've put out so many records that I've spent so much time on, and like nothing happened with it because I was
Right.
just dumb about it, you know. So there's something to be said about the rollout, you know, and like just because you have it done, man, you gotta look at the value of what you made, you know,
Right.
and put that, you put all that time into it, then you better, That's how I look at it now. And I mean, like
The time and the
from
resources
here on
and the
out, man, we're
marketing.
gonna do it right. you know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, the marketing, man. The marketing budget makes up 70%, I'd say, of like an album release.
Yeah.
To do it
and
the right
that's another
way.
thing, we didn't really have those kind of things to play with in the past, so it'll be different, man. Hopefully, I don't know, find some wood. Get that wood knocking right there. Make a beat out of that.
So do you have any live performances coming up soon?
I got something in March. I'm gonna do this thing called Fresh to Death. I'm gonna be DJing and doing
okay.
in March, and then I think we're gonna maybe do the Xtraordinaires thing in April. I don't know if I told you about that actually. Okay. But yeah, I mean, basically it'll pick up hopefully this spring. I haven't really been seeking, and I've turned a couple things down just because I'm kind of making the record right
Yeah.
now. You know what I mean? So, but yeah, the spring, summer, I'll be some stuff to check out for sure.
Cool. Do you want to give any shout outs?
Shout out to the world, KC. No shouts to Donald Trump. No shouts. I don't know, man. Yeah, peace to everybody.
Cool. Well, thanks for coming on the show today, man.
Yeah, thanks for having me, man.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it's good. It's good.